All right, so I think this is the hour. I'm going to jump right into it, knowing it's also going to be recorded later. Thank you so much for coming to this session. This is the only session out of the 5 I'm doing today that is not about imparting information to other people, but it's actually about sharing my story. So let me tell you how that happened. The DG Sentinel, the amazing nonprofit I work at, I've touched a bit about it here and this morning. We are a nonprofit social media platform hoping to help share people's stories and, raise awareness and create movements together and be a socially responsible alternative to the world we see ourselves in today. The wonderful team there put together a bunch of ideas for talks at Medium Day. We were really hopeful that they would end up picking one of them, and they ended up picking all 5. So this is very, very special to me because it is a conversation about me and about my story. And I was asked to talk a little bit about the many different lives that I've lived, and the many different careers that I've had, and some of the successes that I've had along the way, and how I achieved all those successes and became who I am today, which is very flattering. And I'm very grateful that people were interested in that. But that's by no means my perspective on the story. And so by sharing my story today, I hope that I will show all of you what it's been like to be me, and just hopefully give some thoughts and clarity on life and how special it is, and how you really should not wish to be anyone but yourself, because you have no idea at all who is actually, what people's lives are actually like. So when I was asked to tell my story, I did not know where to start because, like most people, I have 2 truths. So what I did is I pulled up old things that I had written about myself for different audiences. A public audience, somebody I was trying to impress, someone I was trying to share my resume with, and the private audience, or the personal audience, or even the audience I discovered on Medium, where I could share personal stories about who I was, where I could share my voice, where I could share the reality of what I had been through. I submitted one story to Y Combinator a few months ago when I thought about whether or not our nonprofit might fit some of their interests. Of course, Y Combinator is more of a for-profit tech startup. But I wrote in the style that they expected about what I did, and bragging, unconditionally bragging, just jumping in to what I've done in life. I wrote this. I started a nonprofit that helped over 1,000 people in under 3 months at the start of the pandemic. As a national security and cybersecurity attorney, I won an award for outstanding achievement from the Secretary of Defense. I had a song on the radio at 8 years old. I worked at CERN in particle physics at 14, the year we discovered the Higgs boson. I worked with Nobel Laureate Saul Perlmutter at 15 on supernova cosmology. I graduated UC Berkeley with multiple scholarships. It goes on and on, right? I was trying to brag about everything that I've done. Really, the goal there is to prove that you are qualified to lead an organization, that you are smart, that you're intelligent. This was the first time in my life that I had written a brag sheet like this. The first time that I hadn't included something self-deprecating, that I had really talked about every aspect of my background. I go on to talk about being an Amazon best-selling author, having over 300,000 followers on LinkedIn, teaching Python students in algebra, being recognized as an out leader in national security, performing as a concert pianist, even being a top voice on Medium. Talked about people I'd represented as an attorney, the languages I spoke, the countries I'd traveled to. And I ended with something that I am the most proud of, but that I do not think anyone at the Y Combinator or anyone looking at this would have been impressed by, which was just that I have a lot of friends. I have over 20 friends I can call at any time, and a large and well-connected network of activists. And the reason that I included that was because it's something I'm very proud of. It's something that was very difficult for me to achieve above everything else that I shared. And I realized while writing it that everyone's life story is like this. Everyone here on the call has a powerful life story, something they're passionately interested in or proud of themselves for doing, that everyone else doesn't see, because they see only the accolades or the failures, the big things that we're taught to care about, fame and money and everything else. And we forget our own life in the portrayal to other people, just like we assume of other people that they have lived the life they portray and not the life they're living behind. One of the quotes that stuck with me most in life is, never judge your failures, your lowest points, by someone else's highlight reel. Well, maybe that's my highlight reel. And it is true. All of it is true. And that's the story that I was asked to tell. But There is also a hidden story behind every one of those achievements. A story that I've told only a few times, hidden here and there in Medium essays, carefully left off from the endless LinkedIn posts where I'm more trying to tell people advice or help people in the world. The types of talks and speeches that I've given today at Medium, and that I will continue to give. I think this is exactly halfway through the day. 2 I've given, 2 yet to come. A lot more about the things I do now and the person I am now and the ways in which I can help you, but not necessarily who I am. I started a nonprofit, for example, a viral nonprofit, one that's seen as successful now, because I wanted to quit my job to travel, and it happened to be March of 2020, and the pandemic hit. The thing is, I quit my job not because I had a lot of money saved up or because traveling the world sounds awesome, it does, but because I'd burnt out. I was exhausted. I was unhealthy. I had a lot of things to deal with, things that I still have not felt comfortable talking about online. For someone who many people think is very, very public, I still only share cherry-picked stories from my life, stories I'm willing to share, stories I feel that will not take away from the personality or identity I've created, because it's hard enough in this world being an openly queer brown woman. I didn't need to add to that. So I left. Tried to take a break, turned into the pandemic, didn't create a break, accidentally created a nonprofit instead. And I discovered other things that I offered to myself, to Medium, and to others during that time. Shared stories about my mental health and my mental trauma, depression, anxiety, even suicidal ideation, things I never imagined to share with the world. Because at least having left the government as a government attorney, I no longer felt that I had to hide those parts of myself. And I could share with the world some of the things that I'd been through, some of the things that I sacrificed to create that brag sheet and that accolade list. And that's the version that everyone wants to share and to tell. I talk about the languages I speak and the countries that I've been to, but I didn't mention the number of sleepless nights in jet lag and travel, or the fact that to this day I do not have any sort of concept of a home. I don't know where to settle down because I've been to so many places. I feel that urge to move, but I do not know where I can just be myself, safe, speak freely, live freely, who I am. A place where my Black friends and my brown friends could live freely and celebrate their culture, where there is still free speech and women's rights and support for the LGBTQ plus community. It's hard. Finding a home is hard. Sometimes I tell my story differently. Sometimes I start with the beginning, with who my parents were, immigrants to this country, making this country being America, by the way, making massive sacrifices so that I could have a good life, and realizing that the definition of good, their definition of good and society's definition of good and everyone else's definition of good was so far from my definition of good. And it was through all this that I realized I define my life, and I define life in general, as good if you are happy and if you make other people happy. You are the good you do in the world. You are the impact that you make given where you started and where you come from. I find it fascinating that this, as I predicted, by the way, would end up being the smallest of all the talks that I give today. The least heard. I don't know that anyone will look at this after it's recorded. This is not unlike all the others, one that's been requested before, one that I've given before, or one that companies might hire me to speak. Because it's personal and it's also specific. It's my story. I guarantee you there's no one else who has exactly the same accolades that I do or exactly the same story I do. The applicability seems low. Why would you come and listen to me as opposed to a dozen other speakers who may share the same topic and the same conversation from a different angle? And you may think, as you listen to all of them, wow, yeah, you've all lived lives, but I don't know what I have to do with it. Well, I'll tell you what all of you have to do with it. You are all also living a life, the brag sheet, like me. Something somebody may ask you to talk about in a very different way, where they want to know how you managed to achieve all of that. And what they're asking, what they want to know, what all of you want to hear, what the people who asked me to give this talk wanted me to say is, here's how you do it. You graduate young. You go to community college while you're in high school. You work every moment of every day so that by the time you're 20 and you graduate law school and have a good job, you're still only 20. You can accomplish so many different things. And here's how I did that. And here's how I got into Georgetown. And here's how I got those scholarships. And here's how I became an attorney and won those awards and built my network. Here's how I made friends. And by the way, if you have any time, I highly recommend you come to the later session I'm giving today about lessons to make you a global impact leader. It's more useful to you. I'll agree to that. But also, I talk about how to make friends, which is such an important thing as an adult. But it doesn't tell you how hard it is to do. It doesn't tell you how painful it is when your friends leave, when you're 22 and you've made 25, 30 friends to prove to your family that you're not the friendless loser they told you would be. And half of them leave anyway because you didn't realize as a young teenage girl making friends 5, 10 years older, they actually are only interested in a few very predatory things. And making friends your age is impossible because now you are so much younger than everyone else. By the time you make it to work, people don't really make work colleagues, work friends. So you have to work twice as hard for everything. That part they want to leave out. They want to leave out the part where you are miserable, where you nearly died, where everything that is a part of your life that you remember, the memories worth living, are not the things other people notice. And I think, this is what I think, a truly honest life is one in which the things people notice are the things that you notice as well about yourself. And I wonder how true that is for most of us. I really appreciate the comment, by the way. I see it come in mentioning that Canada is a good place to live. Come from Hamburg, Germany, and have now been in Canada for 63 years. That is fantastic. And 63 years, wow, you must have lived a very long and impressive life, with many stories in Canada. So I definitely defer to your judgment. Canada does seem lovely. It is very cold. But it does, I agree, meet the things that I was talking about in advance, about finding a place where I can belong and where I won't be treated poorly, and which has free speech and rights and all of that. So I wrote that first story for Y Combinator, story, if you'll call it, just a bunch of facts listed in order about things I'd accomplished. But if you ask me more about who I am, I would say that I wrote a truer story for Medium a few years ago. And one of the suggestions for Medium Day was to read something I'd written for Medium. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that in any of my other sessions today, and I don't think I will because, as I mentioned, most of the others are about how I can help you and about how you can improve your life. But I did think I would share this story here. So if you will indulge me, I hope you listen to it. And if you are more of a visual learner than an auditory learner, this is on my Medium profile. It's about my life and about how I look at my life. Once upon a time, I nearly died. I was very young when it happened, hardly a teenager, with eyes watching the world and my heart hidden at home. I did not know that then that there would be no end to the changes that came. The younger sister who became the older one, the parents who grayed before their years would ask it of them, the friends and family who would ebb and flow with turned shoulders and averted eyes. I did not know that, with the stone-cold diffidence of a cruel world, the vice grip of death would try again and again. This essay is not about that story, though. It's not about what got me here, why I live under the dark shadow of a swift knife, why I wake up each day, thankful I did not pass silently into nothingness in my sleep. And it's also not about religion. It's not about God or nirvana or the vibrant shores of eternal rest. There is nothing that may come later that changes the fierce hope most of us cling to when forced to think of it, the hope that it comes later, much later. No, this essay is about life, with all of its acid-washed joys and forgotten tears. It is about how you actually live when you're actually afraid of dying. It's about the great tragedy that is the truest loss of innocence. Parents, protect your kids from learning too early about the nature of the world. Childhood is a magical palace, eagerly thrown aside and impossible to retrieve. I must say first that there is nothing good about my reality. The cutesy stickers about living each day as if it is your last have spared no second thought for the manifestation of what that becomes in a world of plans and cities. It is better to focus on life than to wonder when it may end. Of that much I am certain. I wish for nothing more than the days when I'd go out to the green park and the red slides and the yellow swings and not wonder if it would be the last time I'd share the blue sky with my friends. But you cannot control a mind that has seen too much and refuses to forget it. So you adapt. You let it change every bit of your whole life, every bit of who you are, because you are nothing without mortality, and yet you are nothing with it either. Some things are obvious. I live with no regrets, no need for last words. I tell my family and friends I love them every chance I get, and I communicate all my little feelings. I eat ice cream and scream out car windows. I discover new music and listen to the same song 1,000 times in a row. Others are unique. I feel responsible for changing the world now. Yesterday would have been better. Yesterday is always better. But long ago, I wanted to be a singer. I still compose poignant melodies on the piano I've played for 2 decades. Someone once told me to spend my 20s in Hollywood. I had a music agent. It was the dream once. My high school counselor told me I'd be president one day. After I had a long career in something else, anything else. I worked at CERN when I was a senior. I wanted to be an astrophysicist. I'm told you can start politics anyway when you're 40, 50, even 70. It's never too late. It's always too late. But if you have no guarantee of making it to 40, you don't wait until you're 40. You don't sing love songs or study the stars, pretty and meaningless as they are. You graduate college at 17 and go to law school. You get married at 21. You start an international nonprofit at 23. And when the people look at you and point fingers, accusing you of Asian tiger parents and bitterness, of greed for fame and money and awards, you smile and joke and nod because you cannot tell them, I am not a genius, I am dying. For that is the truth. The reality of this bitter and beautiful world, this precious and fleeting planet, is that we all always, in 1,000 ways, in a cascading fall until the inevitable end, are dying. We are. And today, I get the messages from my friends on my phone piled up like little scattered post-its. Why do you not travel? Take a break. Spend your money. Don't work so hard. YOLO. I do not YOLO, I tell them. I do not believe in stripping Earth for your short 25 or 100 years of existence. I believe in living on. In the extra moments you buy for someone else, in the quality of life you share, the laughter you've caused, the moments of humanity you've created. I try my hardest to prevent death for me and for everyone else. I do not eat meat. I fight police brutality. I want gun control. I use natural products. Whatever life you cannot live, I believe you must give to someone else 1,000 times over. You must make things better. You must. I try every second I'm awake, every second I'm not filling my choking lungs with the fresh air from my parents' backyard, playing games with my overworked sister, or savoring the delicious taste of a well-cooked meal. Every second I cannot directly give to the world, I use to recover or to grow so someday I can give more. For that is the true shadow of death, the threat you will have been worthless, or worse, a blight on the planet. That you will have been here, living like a little black hole, sucking away the light and giving nothing back. That you will wander, maskless, convictionless, spreading your germs and disease and poison, killing others before you too vanish into the void. Those who understand death do not lightly take others' happiness and lives. And then there's the strength of every emotion you feel, and you let yourself feel it. You hate with the fierceness of a Category 5 typhoon. You celebrate small victories like they are the Biden inauguration. You protect your family like you're fighting for the last lifeboat on a sinking ocean liner. And you try to do it all. I draw and paint. I write bold novels. I fight for justice. I sing in several languages. You take risks. I still think about running for office someday, and yet I write inflammatory words and personal love stories. I quit my day job for an uncertain future. You do the little things. I recycle everything. I watch the sunsets like I watch people, like they are a fleeting glimpse of true beauty, like they are special. I see my family almost every day. I call my mom before I sleep. I cuddle my dog and kiss my husband and worry they might die before me and worry they might not. You do the big things. I will never stop fighting to make sure other people and animals live a life filled with innocence and joy and happiness and love and light and peace and hope and everything that was snatched away from me far too young and far too easily, all because I love the world with open hands. And above all, you live. So that is my story. That is the story I wrote on Medium. In many ways, the ironic thing is it does share everything that the original story did from Y Combinator. It talks about the same things in some ways. I did talk about wanting to be in music. I talked about a few of the things I had done in physics, even touched on being an attorney. As you can probably tell, that was written in the pandemic. I happened to be in DC the day of the Biden inauguration, which was a really wonderful moment, and everyone was really excited. There are parts of my life in there, facts, same as the brag sheet. But it is a very different story. And Tom, to answer your question, I read 2 pieces. One was a kind of brag sheet essay thing I wrote for a competition, or like a grant thing where you had to just talk about who you are. And the other was an essay that I wrote on Medium about my life. And both were basically about summarizing your life. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to share both of those with you, all of you, because they are very different stories. And I guarantee you that you also will have those very different stories. If I had originally just shared how I came here and the 5 different careers that I've had and the 5 different lives I've lived, in physics, in writing, in law, in all of the different areas and things that I became afterward, and being a columnist and writing and as an influencer, or today leading 2 nonprofits, it buries everything else that made me who I am today and the way I feel about my own life and my own story. And the fact that if you hear all those things, you probably think it comes from someone motivated by something much more beautiful or ambitious or powerful or unsullied than by, the scepter of death. So I hope that by sharing my story, you can see that I am many things, but to me, in my own eyes, the most important thing is that I am alive. I am light. I am bright. I use my flame to light other candles. And I always ask people when I share my story, what about you? Do you live? Do you really live? Is your light bright? Do you use it to burn, or do you use it to illuminate the darkness? I hope that everyone here and everyone in the world can learn to eventually find their way to true happiness and purpose. It's why I came today to talk about world-changing issues and how to find your purpose and how to write better pieces and lessons to make you a better global leader. I'm spending most of today sharing all of that and hopefully helping make the world a little bit brighter. But I wanted to share my story so that you can see what life is often actually like, even for people who look and sound like me. And I hope that when you find out who you are, you're able to help save yourself, make your life better, save the world. And above all, I hope that you too can learn to live. Thank you so much for coming. As I mentioned, this was a really special talk for me. Everything else I am talking about today is for other people, hopefully to help make the world a better place. And I'm very grateful that Medium gave me this opportunity to share my story and my background, do a little bit of a different story, share my life, and share my Medium essay. And thank you so, so much. I am leaving bit more time than usual to answer any questions or to talk to people. But also, if anyone wants to share something anonymously or otherwise in the question and answer section, I would love to read it and share it to you as well. So I wanted to leave time for that. Thank you again for coming. Anjali, thank you so much. It took a lot less courage now to read it than, I will be honest, to write it. I was very terrified when I wrote it. I wrote another piece about more pinpoint about my mental health struggles. I didn't want to put a bunch of trigger warnings on this. I didn't want to share it here. Absolutely terrified. Definitely the scariest thing I've done in my life was publishing that piece. So thank you. Claire, thank you so much. That's really sweet of you. I really appreciate it. Dagmar, thank you. That's a great question, Dagmar says. I said in a previous session, my mission is to help my generation save the world, actually, not just the environment, but without destroying their mental health. How is my mental health doing all that? It's a good question. I have learned to take care of my mental health. I meditate every day. There are 3 meditations I'm really passionate about, and I try to do one every day. I exercise every day now. It took me so many years to learn to exercise every day. I went to therapy. Therapy wasn't that great for me, to be honest. I don't tell a ton of people that because I recognize I want to encourage everyone to go. I would not be here without having gone, but it wasn't easy for me, and it wasn't as successful for me at first as I'd have hoped. But I try. I have good friends, a good friend circle. I have a good family. I've learned to accept who they are for who they are. One of the best things I've learned in life is that everyone does have light. And if you let them shine in the ways they know how, and you use them and you let them into your life in the ways in which they want to be in your life and in ways in which they shine, instead of trying to force them to shine the way you want them to, you can have much healthier and more productive relationships. So I know there are friends I can call in the middle of the night because I'm having a breakdown. And I know there are friends whom I love to death, whom I can count on for everything. They're not going to be there to like vent. They're going to be like, well, you did XYZ wrong. How about doing this next time? Right. So you got to know who's there for you and why they're that way. And it's not because they mean harm, but because everyone's light is different. So it's doing better now is the long story. I still have some of the challenges though that I've faced in terms of my health. And so that is rough. Anonymous, what sort of meditation do you practice? Even I find it hard to be consistent in my exercising habits. I do 3 meditations most frequently. One is breath meditation, focusing on my breath for about 5 or 10 minutes. Another is focusing on gratitude for 5 or 10 minutes, things I'm grateful for in my life. And the third is sort of a body scan from head to toe, relaxing every part of my body. The other thing I do is not really meditation, but it does let me sleep at any time in any place. So what I've been doing for this medium day is I've been doing my session sleeping for 20 minutes, coming back sleeping, because I didn't get any sleep last night. I just flew into town. So it's kind of like a meditation, and that's the one I recommend the most because it helps me sleep immediately and get rest when I find it. So, and that's kind of a body scan from head to toe. It's a good question. Claire asks, is there something or someone who inspires you? Oh gosh, I have the most selfish answer to this, but I said I would go into this session honestly, so I will. First, when I was younger, everyone inspired me. My parents taught me you could find the light in everyone and you could learn from anyone, no matter who they were. And they always taught me to respect everyone equally, whether or not they had a high status job or a low status job. And I did that. And I always found things to love about people. And then I got hurt again and again and again, because most people, it's not that they suck, it's that they have to focus on their own lives. And so at some point I stopped being inspired by other people and I had to relearn how to do it. And in between, I honestly was kind of just inspired by myself. I tried to be inspired by the fact I was alive, and that no matter how unlucky I felt, there were certain points in my life where I wouldn't have survived if it hadn't been for luck. And it sounds bad because I don't think I'm that great or anything. It's just that by allowing myself I was unable to instill, I'm largely unable to be proud of myself. I don't think inherently, subconsciously, I'm that impressive, but I can be grateful for the sacrifices I made in the past that let me be here. So I know gratitude is a little bit different from inspiration, but I try to be grateful. I try to be like, hey, baby Isvari did this thing, so I can be here now. And I need to be really grateful she made that sacrifice. So that's how I tend to, it really helps me now. But there's so many people who are incredible who I think are inspirations, but that's sort of a trick related to the meditation and mental health that I've used that really helps me lead a healthier life. But in terms of people and names, by the way, one huge shout out is just like my dog has been a huge inspiration for me, huge lifesaver as well. But he is just so happy about all the littlest things every day. And that has made my life so much brighter, watching him do that and then learning to live life like he does. So thank you so much, Michael. That's such a sweet, sweet comment for you to say. Yeah, Anjali. Yeah, there's a lot of yoga practices that I really recommend. And the wonderful thing about yoga is it does combine physical exercise and meditation. So for lazy people like me, it's really, really helpful. I actually really like and need to get into the habit of doing again the Surya Namaskar every morning. If you Google it, it's a really nice way to wake up and it gets your energy going and gets me out of bed. I used to really struggle with like getting out of bed in the morning. Anjali asks, is it important to have people to look up to, or the ones that inspire to have heroes? It's a great question. I think that it's important to have people to look up to for specific things. And I will always tell people what those things are. I think Taylor Swift is one of the best businesswomen I have ever seen. I think so is Rihanna. She's an incredible businesswoman. I think that Joe Biden it's not from a political perspective. There's many things I disagree with him on, right? But his perseverance or like overcoming loss, right, is something to be inspired by. Or, writers, famous writers, just their grit and their ability to create famous fantasy worlds. I always find things. The reason I try not to have traditional heroes is because I and many other people are very susceptible to hero worship. And I recognize that about myself and about society. And so I try very hard not to look at anyone with too many blinders or rose-colored glasses on, unless they're real people I know and love. So my parents, I look up to them, my husband, my sister, my friends. But I know those aren't traditional heroes that I can like share with everyone. But I believe that everyone deserves to be loved unconditionally by someone, and you deserve to love people unconditionally. We have to be careful who those people are, and they should never be people you don't know. So I know people who love celebrities unconditionally. Sometimes it's really sad and bad. It turns into a cult or into a pseudo social relationship that's harmful to everyone. And sometimes it's sweet so far, but I still worry what happens if, the star does something wrong, or, you lose this person you never know. So for me, important to have people to look up to or inspire. Absolutely. You should always find people who are excelling at the things you want to excel at and learn from them. But in terms of having heroes, I believe they should always be people you know and love personally. Any other thoughts, questions? It takes me a little bit to load, so if you've written them recently, I will have to check in just a bit. All right, we are at the hour. If I didn't answer anything that you wanted to ask me, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Medium. I'm happy to. And if you are looking to advice, tips, or just want to learn more, highly recommend the other sessions I did this morning, as well as come to the next one. We have an amazing guest speaker as well there, Writer Culture Clash, How Not to Overwrite Pieces. And then to wrap up the day at, I think, 3:30 p.m. ET, 3:30 p.m. ET, 21 lessons to make you a global impact leader. It is just straight fire tips. I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you so much for coming and listening to me.